Hello everybody. So today I want to talk about MicroStrategy, and I want to talk specifically about this company, MicroStrategy, being a one-way trip, being a fiat trap, being like something I may hear in the US a few times, like the Roach Motel. You get in, but you never get out. And that's the point that I'm trying to get at in the case of MicroStrategy. MicroStrategy is both a play on shorting the fiat, shorting the dollar, transferring that fiat, that dollar, into Bitcoin, and then holding on to the Bitcoin because Saylor is the biggest maxi of them all. You know, there is this, to some it's a compliment, to others it's an insult. There is this quote of being a Bitcoin maximalist. Well, I cannot think of a bigger maximalist than Michael Saylor in many ways. And he said things like, please short the stock. I welcome my short sellers. I promise you I won't sell Bitcoin. So if you think Bitcoin is bad, you go ahead and you start shorting MicroStrategy and how much of Bitcoin they own. He's known for there is no second best. How many memes have been done about him saying there's no second best, calling people saying, oh, it's stupid, ridiculous, stupid. If you think there is anything else, Bitcoin maxis, they have quotes like, oh, you get the Bitcoin at the price you deserve. My last video on MicroStrategy, I said my Thanksgiving plan is if someone asks me if they should buy Bitcoin, because my family knows I'm into Bitcoin. If they ask me if they should buy Bitcoin, I'm like, no, you should wait until Bitcoin gets to 1 million. That's what I'm going to say. Wait until it gets to 1 million and then think about getting in. Don't get in now. He's going to buy at every single level, right? And he always buys the top. That's what he's been saying before. I will be buying the top forever. That is what being a maximalist is. It's a form of extremism. And sure, if you follow Saylor, you know that he has that in him. That's him, I guess you would say, trolling the German government, saying, oh, you do not sell your Bitcoin because they missed out on $1.1 billion in missed profits and counting. And because there is potentially no cap to how high Bitcoin can go, right? That's what a lot of Bitcoin maximalists are saying. Bitcoin is going up forever because fiat has no cap, because fiat is going down forever. As long as fiat goes down forever, then Bitcoin has no choice but to go up forever in fiat terms. The moment that Bitcoin stops going up is when we stop pricing things in dollars or in euros, and we stop doing all of that, and we just use Bitcoin, and we just price everything we value in life in terms of satoshis, right? Or fractions of a satoshi, if we ever get to that world. So that's the Bitcoin crowd. And the fiat crowd actually is a crowd of shorters. If you really think about fiat, most savvy people, I would say, are shorters of fiat. And so the government being the first quote-unquote offender of shorting fiat, the times of Aristotelian virtue, the time of you repay the debt, well, those times, they still applied in the medieval era, but ever since we've had this double accounting standard, we've seen behavior from nation states, right? That was very prominent in the 1900s, but from companies too. Last video on that, I covered Yale University owning a bond from the Netherlands that was more than 400 years old. The point is, old debts are repaid by new debts. You create a new debt to repay the old debt. And they have a fancy word, they call it roll it over. You just roll it over. You roll over the debt. And so what happens is that the US dollar never gets deleted from the system. So when the commercial banks issue dollars, they take a double entry ledger and they write on the credit, oh, we created dollars. And then when you repay that dollar, they will remove the credit, right? You create a credit and you create a debit. And then when you pay it off, you just simply delete it out of the ledger. Well, if debt never gets paid off, if it's always new debt that is issued to pay the old debt, then what are you doing? You're just growing the money stock. You're just growing the pie of dollars. And that's what companies do. That's what a lot of people do. That's what governments do. This is the national debt. We know a lot of a new issue of the national debt is going to pay the old debt. So governments do that. Companies do that. They roll over the debt. They do debt for buybacks sometimes. I can think of Apple doing that. And we even have quote unquote, right there, I'm going to say quote unquote smart Californians. It depends on your view of this practice. But the buy, borrow, die is an extremely well-known practice among the wealthy community. You buy a house, you wait for your house to appraise at 2x the value that you bought it at, and then you go see the mortgage company and you borrow the money against the house. And guess what? The appraisers, right, they haven't caught the memo of the market going down the way it really is. They haven't caught that memo, because if they catch that memo, what do you think is going to happen to property taxes? What do you think is going to happen to school systems, school districts? Everybody has an incentive to think the house down the street is worth 1.5 million. Because if somebody starts saying at some point, oh, by the way, that house down the street is actually worth 600,000, the whole system collapses. And so that's why you have a buy, borrow, die system, where you have just people getting their HELOCs updated every 5 years, every 8 years, every 10 years, and just living on borrowed money having the advantage of it not being taxed. And of course, this is the idea of a cantillon effect, because even this idea has caught on among, say, less rich consumers. But unfortunately, if you are a consumer and you're limited by your credit score, let's say if you get into debt and you wanna get a new credit card to pay an old credit card and you have a bad credit score, well, that doesn't work anymore. That doesn't work for you. Why doesn't it work for you? Because you're too far from the money printer, right? So the single mom with 3 kids who wants to open another credit card to pay off the old credit card, well, she can't do that, right? Because she's very far from the money printer. Now, if the U.S. government, or if a major U.S. city, a major U.S. state, or if Apple stock wants to do that, this is not a problem for them. They can do that because they are very close to the money printer. That is the fiat crowd. This is intuitive in the fiat crowd, that you borrow new money to pay off the old money. And actually, the less wealthy consumer has that intuition built in, I would say, if you look at the student loan crisis and what's happening with a student loan. Well, I would argue the student loans are part of that intuition. Just borrow the money today because it just won't be worth as much. And, $150,000 in student loans in 30 years, that will not look like you paid a lot of money for that education. It will look like you paid very little in 30 years if you still have that loan out. And so that's the fiat bias, that's the fiat standard, and that's why so many people don't hesitate to just borrow the money. MicroStrategy brings the two together. It issues common stock, it issues debt, and it's only a one-way process. You have the ever-growing pie of money right here. That money is mostly sticking, that new money, that excess wealth. It's not sticking on TV dinners, because TV dinners, watch the show How It's Made. It's very easy. You crank up the factory, you make more ice cream. You crank up the factory. You make more Salisbury steak or whatever fake steak. It's very easy to crank up the machine of industrial processes. That's why these products don't experience nearly as much inflation as assets. And what are some of the relevant assets out of the top 3 assets in the world? 2 of them are highly, highly relevant to MicroStrategy and Bitcoin. It is equities and bonds. I've left out real estate of this equation for now. My prior video, I introduced real estate in this model, but leaving out real estate, new money supply, it's going to stick slightly to your inexpensive fast food, a little bit to your kids' toys, but not much. It's mostly going to stick to very expensive, valuable stuff such as equities, such as bonds. Equities and bonds, the reason why the PE inflation in the indices is because those equities are becoming more and more valuable, because that's where the new money sticks to. And so when the new money supply sticks to equities and sticks to bond, it makes its way to MicroStrategy. If MicroStrategy's current price holds on the last Thursday, I think it's November 29. On November 29, if that holds, MicroStrategy is going to make it to the NASDAQ. They're going to unlock maybe $1 billion of new straight equity inflows into the asset. Saylor's going to issue equity. He's rumored to be issuing equity right now. What do you think happens when Saylor issues equities? You just turn it around and you buy Bitcoin. It's a one-way street. You get the money supply growth that goes into the equities, and then one-way street to MicroStrategy, who turns it into Bitcoin right away. This is the one-way only wall. Once you cross that wall, it only goes one way. And the same for the bonds, the convertible debts. MicroStrategy has no intention of either rolling over the debt or repaying the debt. What he hopes is that the price of MicroStrategy will be so high that most bondholders will just decide to convert their convertible bonds into equity, because it is a rational thing to do, because once you do that, you make 30, 50, 60% of your money, because of course the warrants associated with the bonds are issued at a premium, and so it makes sense once the underlying stock exceeds the convertible bond price that you would just take the price, take the stock, cancel the debt. So these bonds, these converts that are bought by the bond market, which, by the way, the MicroStrategy convert, from my understanding, is one of the most popular bond ever in the history of bonds, from my understanding. And I'm not a bond investor, so take that with a grain of salt. But those bond buyers, those bonds are getting bought. MicroStrategy goes up, so they get the money from the bonds. They buy the Bitcoin. When they buy the Bitcoin, the price of Bitcoin goes up, which means that MicroStrategy since MicroStrategy is trading at a multiple of Bitcoin, MicroStrategy goes up, and when MicroStrategy goes up, it triggers conversion of the convertible debt, because you've just reached the strike price, and so the debt converts, and then all of a sudden MicroStrategy can issue more debt. It's a black hole. That's the best description I can take. It's a black hole that takes the ever-growing US dollar through that door, through that black hole door, who then converts it into Bitcoin. MicroStrategy is a Trojan horse for Bitcoin, and that's why I believe, and when I look at the performance of this stock, that's why I believe there is no way out. It's a fiat trap. MicroStrategy is a fiat trap. So hopefully you like this no financial advice video. This is not financial advice, not investment advice, just entertainment. Please like, please subscribe, follow me on Patreon, follow me on X. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.